Your acoustic sounds suck. You need a DI box. This is IkeGuitar. Let's dive in. What's going on, guys? IkeGuitar here with another video. Today we're talking all about DI boxes. We'll talk about what a DI box is, what a DI box does, and why you need one. But first off, what is a DI box? A DI box stands for a direct injection box, and at its core, essentially a DI box transfers your quarter-inch unbalanced signal to an XLR output to go into a soundboard. DI boxes are used all around in professional audio. You'll use them for keyboards, use them for Macs, you'll use them for basses and acoustic guitars. And today, for the sake of our explanations, we'll be talking about acoustic guitars and basses mainly. Acoustic guitarists, you need some help because you're not using a DI box. Now, a DI box does a little more than convert a quarter-inch input into an XLR output. DI boxes do three main things. One, they do the conversion, which we talked about before. But two, they convert the unbalanced signal coming out of your guitar to a balanced signal. That is crucial. And number three, they do impedance matching. We'll talk about impedance here in a second, but let's talk about unbalanced to balanced cables. Now, as far as converting a unbalanced signal to a balanced signal, you may know a little bit already, but essentially your guitar's output jack uses unbalanced mono quarter-inch cables. And these quarter-inch cables, don't know if you've heard on stage or whatnot, can introduce some hum when going into your rig. Thankfully, the DI box will help you with that. When it goes into the soundboard, it uses a balanced cable, and that's going to be a TRRS or an XLR output in this opinion. And it's going to make that cable sound great. Now, another thing that it does is impedance matching. Acoustic guitars and bass guitars standalone have a very high impedance. What does that mean necessarily? Well, high impedance just simply means that when you go back into a board that's low impedance, you're going to find some high signal degradation. You're going to lose some frequencies. We don't want that. Typically, if you're going over unbalanced cable in a high impedant instrument, you're going to find signal degradation at about 15 feet of cable. What the DI box does is that it acts as somewhat of a buffer, giving you that high end back that you need for your instrument. Pretty crucial indeed. Now, there are two main kinds of DI boxes. For the sake of my example here, I've got a Teegarden Active Magic DI. I love Brett Teegarden, he makes a ton of great stuff. Thank you to Randy from the pool room for letting me borrow this thing for the YouTube video. The Magic DI is an active DI box, and what active simply means is that it has a much higher impedance input capability than the passive DIs. So as an example, usually a passive DI will have about 1,500, 150,000 impedance, and then sometimes the active DIs will have a whole 1 mega ohm of impedance, which is pretty great. Now, Magic DIs and active DIs do have some cool features that are in addition to some other things passive DIs already have. For example, they have an integrated pad, they might have a high pass filter, they might have two throughs, which is great, love me a through every once in a while, and a host of other features. It depends on the active DI box. Active DI boxes almost always require 48 volt phantom power, which this one does require 48 volts. A lot of other active DI boxes also have the option for a 9 volt battery instead of phantom power. Pretty crucial if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of boards that supply phantom to the DI box. Having that battery is a lifesaver. Now, along with the pads and the high pass filters and the grounds and cool features on an active DI box, a lot of active DIs have integrated preamps as well. The preamps are pretty crucial for helping your signal retain its clarity throughout the cable run, as well as giving your guitar a much needed boost. Now, passive DIs are going to be a little different. Passive DIs are mainly used for already active instruments. Maybe your acoustic guitar has a 9 volt installed, or your bass has EMGs with 9 volts, or you have a Mac or a keyboard that already has an internal preamp and power supply pumping audio to that DI. Now, obviously, if the balanced signal converting or the impedance matching or all the great features of these DIs don't already, make your mouth water to buy one, I would also say that a active DI is super crucial for the vast majority of acoustic players. Why am I saying that? Because listen, guys, your acoustic preamps and your acoustic pickups suck. they suck trash. I mean, every single acoustic guitar I have come across in the world of music, except for really high-end $2,000 plus acoustic guitars, sound like garbage. They really do need some help, and that's what the Active DI tends to do. The Active DI does add a whole lot of body and a whole lot of volume to some pretty subpar preamps in most guitars. Now listen, even if you don't use your 9-volt guitar with an Active DI, that's fine. You're going to want to use a passive DI box anyway. If you were to plug in your guitar into a mixing bowl without a DI box on the signal chain, if that sound guy for some horrible reason decides to send 48-volt phantom to your guitar is fried. I mean, you're gonna have ground hum, and then your guitar will just die. It'll overload the electronics in the guitar. So make sure you have a DI box, if not for sound, then for safety. Now listen, vintage guitars is where the Active DI box is really going to shine, because unlike passive DIs, Active DIs are meant for passive instruments. So if you buy a vintage Gibson from the 60s or a vintage Martin, a pre-war Martin, and you decide to put on a microphone underneath the sound hole to kind of pick up electronics, you're going to need something to boost that signal. The microphone on most aftermarket installations for guitars, they're not powerful enough to really output a lot of volume for the mixing desk and to retain all of your high-end information in the process. So that being said, guys, if you're a bass player or an acoustic player, DI boxes are crucial, and you need to know how they work. It's important to know the three things they do. One, it's impedance matching, it's load balancing, and it's conversion, but you get a whole bunch of other goodies as well. With the Active DI boxes, you got preamps, pads, high-pass filters, throughs, you name it. Really helpful for any musician, and I recommend an Active DI box to help you out in your current gig. Now guys, the cool things I like about the Magic DI, it's not like typical Active Direct boxes. The Magic DI is approximately a unity gain device, which means it does not decrease the operating level of the output down to the microphone level. It's actually about 20 decibels higher in output than other devices in its class, and that requires less gain from the board or line amps and gives a better signal to noise ratio. And if you use this direct box, it just means that many will find that their instruments and effects will be less noisy compared to other Active Direct boxes. So guys, like I said before, one of the big things about DI boxes is the ability to impedance match. And most Active DI boxes have an input impedance of about 1 mega ohm, okay? So most guitars, most passive pickups can live without fear of having signal degradation, but some pickups are so high in impedance they go past that 1000 mark. But the one thing about the Teegarden I really like is the fact that the Teegarden Magic DI has 1 giga ohm of high input impedance, which means that any pickup, including piezo transducers, will not lose signal degradation going back to the mix console. I love this part about the Magic DI, unlike any other DI on the market, and this DI truly is magic. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video on DI boxes. If you like it, please consider subscribing. I make videos all the time. If you want to see a demo of the Brett Teegarden DI, I can do that for you. I'm excited to try this out over the course of the next month. I've got a few wedding gigs coming up with my acoustic guitar, and I'm going to love using this DI box. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, get a DI box down in the description below.